Hi, I'm Sally Bourdon. I'm a researcher here at Fab Lab Barcelona and a civic ecology expert. I'm a biologist by training, also an ecological economist, but I have experience in a wide variety of disciplines, from teaching to marketing and communications and now to research. Today, we're going to be talking about communicating design ideas. So we're going to take you through, first, how to identify your audience. Who are you talking to? Second, what are you saying? What are you telling your audience? Third, how do you build and create your community? Fourth, how to plan and make content. We'll then go through some case studies and we'll close with some practical tips of how you can get started on this process. Before creating any comms materials, first, you have to know who your audience is, like really know them. So what does that mean? Well, who are you talking to? If you don't know who you're talking to, you're going to have a pretty hard time communicating about your ideas because you won't be directing it to anyone in particular. So you need to know first who you're talking to, then what are you saying, where, when, and how are you going to say it? The more you know about the background of your audience, the better. The easier that you can engage with them, and the easier that in the end you can communicate your ideas and do better business. So who, again, are you talking to? Are you talking to a group of 20 to 30-year-olds in the US who are mostly matcha drinkers and also listen to indie music? Are you communicating to a group of elderly men in the Middle East in their 70s who play chess online all day? Who is your audience? The more that you know about them, their needs, and the background, the better that you can engage with them. This will help you craft your look, your tone, your tagline, your website, and any comms pieces that you need. So something really important to remember is that there's no such thing as everyone. Your audience isn't everyone. You might have the best product in the world. I believe you, really, I do. But it's not going to be for everyone. Just because you get a lot of likes, for example, doesn't mean all of those people are clients. So you really need to be able to distinguish between who are people that are just curious about your work versus who are people that are actually going to buy and engage with your work. So what types of things should you know about your audience? Well, you can learn about their age, their gender, their culture, their expectations, their needs, their languages. These are all important things that can help you in identifying who exactly you're targeting. And where can you find these details? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, I'll just tell you. Social media. People put everything on there, and not just by looking at their profiles, but also by engaging with analytics on these platforms. Most platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn have analytics that you can check into to see who is actually viewing your content, and then you can better adapt your content for that audience. And in addition to that, you can also start following similar accounts. You can use this place as a way to get to know your audience. Unlike a big company, which has tons of resources to do things like market research and focus groups, you, a designer working on your own or in a small collective, likely doesn't have those resources. So use what you do have. Check your social media account, look at other accounts that are similar to yours, start following them, start exploring who their audiences are, and reach out to them. Start engaging with people that are engaging with similar design ideas as yours. And make real connections. Don't just spam a whole bunch of different accounts saying, hey, I like your work, but make thoughtful comments. Try to make real friends first and meaningful connections and go from there. Quantity isn't necessarily the best here. It's not. Quality is what you want to go for. Now that you know who your audience is, we need to identify what you're going to say to them. That's the logical next step, no? So things to keep in mind here. First of all, we don't have time to read. It's the sad reality, but now with scrolling, we have shorter attention spans, and we need to be able to read something and get to the essence of whatever it is quickly. A lot of trouble that designers run into here is that they end up describing what they do as opposed to telling what they do. what does that mean? So, for example, in a recent acceleration program that we ran here at the Fab Lab, our group of innovators were talking about food tech innovations. During the first weeks of the program, they would go around and explain briefly, ideally, what it is they were doing. And sometimes it took them about 10 minutes to say what their project was. And we had certain innovators even saying after that they weren't sure what their peers were doing. You don't want to fall into this territory. So you don't want to either be too technical in describing every single detail or too inspirational where you're telling everyone where you want to go in 5 years, for example, or the change that you want to see in the world. No, we want to know what you're doing and what you're doing now. That's not to say that your TED Talk isn't important and that your technical details aren't important. They are. But there's a place and there's a time to be able to communicate those things. Okay, so how do you come up with these short, concise, punchy lines? Well, we want to use what we call conversational copywriting. Conversational copywriting is basically writing how you speak. You don't have to do a sales pitch or have a massive business spiel. We want to know exactly what it is that you're doing. So if you are, for example, designing sustainable eyewear from recycled plastics, like our friends at Foss, tell us exactly that. Or if you are baking incredibly delicious vegan cookies, that's what you tell us. Then you get into the nitty-gritties and other places. But where we see your tagline, we should be able to clearly identify what it is that you're doing. When you're describing your ideas, say it as if it were a tweet, as if you were confined to 240 or however many characters. Now that you have an idea of what it is that you want to say, talk about what you're doing today, not version 3, 4, 5, or 7, but the version that you're working on now. If what you're doing right now, for example, is establishing a farm for microgreens, tell us about that. Don't tell us about your goal for the future of having an entire greenhouse of hydroponic microgreen systems. And apart from that, write this version at least 20 times. I guarantee you that the 20th version will be better than the first and second. You'll get more concise, you'll find the words that really work for you. And lastly, do the grandparent test. Find somebody that's not of your generation, that's a bit older, and tell them what it is that you do using these punchy taglines. If they get it, which hopefully they will, then you're on the right track. Now that we know who your audience is, and now that you know what you want to say to them, we want to talk about building your community. So how do you engage with your community and make real connections? First of all, open up. What does that mean? Well, bare your souls to us. Literally, tell us about your process. Tell us about your hopes and your challenges, your dreams, what you're working on right now. Show us the progress of your work. If you're having a challenging day and your 3D printer keeps getting jammed, tell us about it. It's okay that things aren't going perfectly all the time, and it makes you more human to be able to share these different sides of how your business or your design studio, for example, are coming together. You can create and share goals also, so not just about what you're doing this week, but long-term, where it is that you want to go. You can also use open source and document well, like on Wikifactory, on any of the GitLab or GitHub, HackMD, your own blog, for example. Share for free what others are charging money for. So that means if you have part of your project that's open source or could be open source, go ahead and share it. Get community engaged by empowering them to take part in your designs and your work. And lastly, offer help. Do you see someone in the comments that says that they're getting stuck? Offer them a hand. Or perhaps this person is even managing another account and doing something a little bit different than you, but you can still offer help and create connections that way. And another idea is sharing projects you love. You don't only have to tell us about your project. You can also share who's inspiring you at the moment. It's a nice way to create community, and it's also a nice way to give back to that very same community. Next tip, be honest. And as I was saying before, share your successes, share your failures, be human in that way. Another way that you can be honest is share your team and show your team. Who's behind what it is that you're doing. Who are the faces that are involved in there on the day-to-day? And lastly, don't worry, be crappy. Nothing has to be professionally perfectly done all of the time. It's great if you have a professional camera and can take some good photos, but it's also perfectly wonderful if you're shooting on your phone. It's natural, it's easy access, and you have it right on hand. And finally, in this theme of building community, make a plan and test. Create a content calendar, for example. You don't have to be sitting every single day thinking, what am I going to add to Instagram or LinkedIn today? But you can sit down maybe once every 2 weeks or once a week and plan out what it is that you're going to do over the next week, 2 weeks, or even the next months. Do that in one sitting as opposed to having to check in every single day, which can be really exhausting. And you can use online tools to help you with this. There are tools like Facebook Creator, Studio, Later, Buffer, all of these types of tools. Some are paid, some are unpaid, or free rather, like Facebook Creator. And these tools can help you manage what content you have, when you're uploading it, and how you're uploading it. Also, try all the different channels. You need to probably test a few times to figure out where your audience is, what platform they're on, and where they're engaging with you. So if you're working with more of a millennial audience, maybe you want to be using Instagram or LinkedIn as opposed to Facebook. So try these channels out first and then choose the ones that are best for you. You don't have to be everywhere all at once. And lastly, listen. Listen to your community, listen to your audience, and have that help guide you in how you're producing content. So let's get into the practical bit. How are you actually going to make your content? Well, first, you need to identify your content inputs. What are you doing in your daily life that you could potentially share about? For our friends at Vela Greens who are producing microgreens hydroponically, this meant, for example, sharing on Instagram stories their deliveries to their customers. For our friends at Domingo Club, it might mean sharing a lunch with friends on their social media that they'd prepared using tempeh. Next, you want to choose the right format. Choose a format for your content that's resourceful. If you are, for example, a talented speaker, you could try a podcast. If you are a good writer, try writing a blog post. You don't have to do the thing that everyone is doing. For example, if you're seeing a lot of long or even short professionally done videos, but you don't have access to a high quality camera or the money for someone to shoot a video for you, then maybe that's not your best option. And if you do feel like investing in that type of an option, then make sure that that content will continuously work for you. We'll talk about repurposing content in a moment. And lastly, define your channels. Figure out where you're going to put that type of content. So if it's a blog post, will it go in your newsletter? Will it go on your social media, but in pieces? Where are the places that you will share it, and where is best for you? So when we talk about the different types of formats of how content can be produced, we are typically thinking about videos, blogs, podcasts, or magazine or print. So for videos, you have channels like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. For your blog, you might have your website, your newsletter, social media. Podcasts could go on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube as well, on your own website too. Where magazine and print type articles could go to professionals in the field or professional publications. So we've mentioned social media a few times, but it's really, really important you have a website where people can take action, where they can link through to your social media, for example, or join your newsletter, or somehow participate in what it is that you're doing, or participate in your community. And your socials, your website, your newsletter, these should all link to one another. So if I'm in your newsletter, I should have links to your social media. If I'm on your social media, somewhere I should be able to easily link to your website. Okay, now let's talk about a case study. The first case study, we have two here. This first case study is the SPML machine, or the Simple Personal Mini Lab, also known as the Six-Pack Mobile Lab. The SPML was created here at Fab Lab in 2020 during the pandemic, and it was the result of students not being able to come in to use the Fab Lab, so our amazing Fab Lab team built a mini Fab Lab that could go home with them. And so this is the content now, the SPML machine. The format that this content took was in the form of videos of its creation and its use, a blog post about how to use it and why it was being used, on I believe HackMD and GitLab, also all of the coding and the instructions for how to make the SPML were all uploaded, and then these were disseminated on all different channels, like our own blog posts, our own website, our newsletter, our social media, but we were also able to send it out to other platforms. Now that you've created your content, you also want it to make it go the distance, make it keep working for you. So you want to repurpose your content. With the SPML, for example, we were able to do these videos. They were then broken down into shorter videos for our social media. Videos can also be turned into a podcast. The text can be taken out and turned into a blog. That blog can then be turned into a print article. If you are starting with a podcast, the words can come out and be put into a blog post, or it can be cut down and made for social media. You have a lot of different options. So one of my favorite examples of people that repurpose content really well and generally are rocking their social media channels, their website, and how they're moving content around and communicating to their audience is Domingo Club. Domingo Club makes fermenters that can then be used to make products like tempeh. And one example of how Domingo Club repurposed content is they used a photo that was taken of a celebrity in the tempeh world who was wearing their tempeh necklace, and they took this photo and wrote a blog post about the event at which the celebrity was speaking, and then they also published it on their social media channels, and then this all linked back to the original Instagram post by the tempeh celebrity, and so it's a nice way to not only repurpose content but also link back to other members in your community. So there's also many different tools that you can use to help you on your journey to communicating design. I'll just name two quick ones right now that we're big fans of here at Fab Lab. And the first comes from the Syscode Toolbox on co-creation journeys. Syscode was an EU project that we were involved with that's all about co-creation processes. And this toolbox is really useful for any step of the co-creation pathway. There's particularly one tool on page 21 called the Stakeholder Engagement and Dissemination tool. This tool helps you to spell out who you think your audience member is, the challenges that particular audience member might have, the needs that they might have, or reasons that they would want to be involved, and the channels that would be appropriate for them. So it helps you to think audience member by audience member and really kind of map that out. And the second tool I want to mention is our communication handbook. This is a space to further explore how you define your brand, its narrative, its elements, define your target audience, and understand the medium of communication channels that are out there. All right, so that's all of the content that I'm going to throw at you for today. So today we've gone through identifying who your audience is, identifying what you're going to say to them, and how you can actually start putting content together and where you're going to communicate to your audience. But I want to leave you with an exercise that you can do to jumpstart this process. So I want everyone to take a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, draw 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. And at the top of one, put inputs, and the second, put format, and the last one, put channels or platforms. You can do this right now in the session or wait and take it home for homework. But the point is that I want you to identify a bunch of different inputs, things that are happening in your daily life right now that you could include as potential content. In the second column, you have your format. So are you going to share your content in a picture, in a written post, with a video, with a podcast? How are you going to capture your content? And lastly, channels and platforms. Where are you going to share this content? Would you share it in LinkedIn in a post, on Instagram in a reel, on TikTok, on Spotify? Which platform are you going to use?